My confession today. My husband recently discovered I was having an affair. Initially, I tried defending myself and blaming him for being so emotionally disconnected in our marriage. The affair lasted for 5 years. The OM was also married. We didn't date, spend the night together, etc. We met periodically and had physical affair. This usually occurred once a month. Since my husband confronted me, and I got over my initial shock of being found out, I have been working really hard to regain his trust. He says he's not leaving and he loves me, and I trust him. I have given him full transparency and check in with him regularly when I am not home. I have given him a lot of details about the affair, what we did, where we did it, etc. There are a lot of issues that I am trying to work through, both personally and in our relationship, but I need to address each one separately. What I need to know is how does knowing every minute detail help him? I have tried to give him as much as I can, but he continues to ask for more and we both get frustrated that I can't give him more. We are very different in that he has a vault that holds every detail of every event and conversation that he has ever had. I just don't work like that. I remember my emotional state and how I felt. It is so hard to give him what he says he needs. I have been providing my husband with all the details of my emotional affair from the beginning but needed a way to delve deeper in myself to provide him with answers to questions that I was struggling to find. Not because I didn't want to or because I was scared, but because I had tried to lock them out. We have started a journal together and it has provided an opportunity to see in black and white what I did but is also a great way to generate conversations. In addition, I am working on a timeline that has proved to trigger memories which I also share. Thank you to those who genuinely see hope in every situation. A little over 5 years ago I met the other men. We were at a party at the house of some mutual friends. My BS was not present. Nor was the other men's BS. At the time, my BS was traveling regularly for his job. He was gone nearly every weekend, and at times for a week or more. I work full-time and at the time had 2 children, ages 4 and 1. The other men's BS was home, 8 months pregnant with their first child. At this party, the other men and I made eye contact regularly and flirted. We were both spending the night at the friend's house and thus both were drinking rather heavily. Before the night ended, the other men found me alone and kissed me. I pulled away and suggested it was not a good idea. Although I was honestly flattered and exhilarated by the attention. We slept in different rooms. The next morning, I awoke and went downstairs. My friend had coffee brewing. I sat in the kitchen and socialized for a few over a cup of coffee. Once my coffee was gone, I gathered my things and bid my farewell. The other man indicated that he would be leaving, too. We walked out of the house together. As we were walking down the driveway to our cars, he gave me his business card and told me to call him. I didn't anticipate that I would call him but gave him my number in return, something I had never done since I met my betrayed spouse. Less than a week later the other men called me. We talked for some time, about the party and other small talk. He said he would like to see me again. I liked the attention and the feeling of butterflies in my stomach, which now I know I should have seen as a big red flag, but I was noncommittal. We had several conversations over the course of a couple weeks, and I gradually found my inhibitions being dropped. I didn't hear from the other men for a couple weeks but learned that the other men's BS had their baby. A few weeks later I started getting calls again. About 2 months after I first met the other men, I invited him to my house in the evening knowing that my BS would be out of town and my children would be asleep. I was ignorant to think that anything other than what happened would occur. We sat at the kitchen table talking for a while over a beer. I showed him a little around the house, and he made his move. We started kissing. Hesitantly at first, and then it became more passionate. He asked if there was any place we could go. I led him to a spare room in the basement that conveniently had a bed. Not to minimize what I did, but because the details of the physical experience I feel are immaterial in this setting. I will just say that we had slept together. He was at my house for no more than 2 hours. Between the conversation and the physical part, he had to get home to his betrayed spouse and new baby. How did I feel about what I had done? Shocked, disgusted, yes. But unfortunately, I felt like I had escaped my reality for a little while and that felt good. A few days passed and the other men called. We talked a bit about nothing in particular and we both acknowledged enjoying seeing each other again. We spoke every few days. Sometimes I would call him as well. A couple weeks later we made plans to meet again just like we had previously. I saw him 3 more times, at my home, in my basement, and then told him we needed to stop. We were both married. Me with 2 kids, him with a newborn. We just couldn't continue. He seemed to accept that and we said goodbye. A few months passed and he called again, after a few conversations. We started the back up again, once or twice. I went to his house, in a spare bedroom, but mostly he was at my house when my BS was away. We saw each other once every 2 or 3 weeks for about 3 months. Again, I tried to end things, out of guilt, but never was strong enough to just end it. A few months would pass and we'd start up again. After about 2 years of going back and forth, my children were getting older and staying up later. I found it more difficult to have the ex-other men to my house. The meetings became less frequent, but the affair continued. We would meet at the ex-other men's house or at a hotel. 4 times, the ex-other men had his second child. My BS lost his mother. During both times there were gaps in the affair. But the affair would pick up again. The last 2 years of the affair were all initiated by the ex-other men. I made not contact with him unless he contacted me first. Months would sometimes pass. But I would end up seeing him eventually. We never exchanged expressions of emotion to each other. We never socialized together over drinks or dinner. We never spent the night together or go away together. It was purely a physical affair. For me it was not even about the physical part. It was an escape. I did not want to be with the ex-other men in a relationship. I did not love him. I was not jealous of the ex-other men's BS. I did not want him to leave her, nor did I want to leave my BS. So, after 5 years of lying and cheating, D-Day arrived. I came home from a meeting which was actually a hotel evening with the ex-other men. I went to bed an hour or so from getting home and my BS came into our room and threw my computer at me inquiring as to why there was a hotel receipt in my email for that night. I fumbled around my words in shock of what was happening. I knew that my BS had every right to leave me and expected that he would. I initially denied knowing what it was about, then slowing started with half-truths. It was only a couple times, it was only a few months. Couple years, then it was the truth. My BS called the ex-other men from my phone. My BS told the ex-other men that he should tell his wife or my BS would. At this point, the life that my BS thought he had was over and the lies that I had lived were over. I was ignorant to think that I wouldn't get caught. I was too weak to stop it from continuing. I hate to admit that it took my BS finding out about my affair to snap me back into reality and to realize that I was being an idiot. There has been no contact with the ex-other men since he left the hotel room that night. There will never be contact with the ex-other men ever again. I feel no loss for that. I could really care less if I never see him again. I could have lost everything that I love because of him and would never risk that again. So, what has happened since D-Day? I will start here, but we'll have to finish in a subsequent post as I need to get lunch for the kids. The first 72 hours after my BS confronted me were the most difficult hours of my life. My BS was so angry and hurt. There were tears and yelling and more yelling. I initially tried to blame my BS. I said I was unhappy with him because he didn't do this or that. Lies. I said I was unhappy with him because of things that he did. Lies. At the time I really didn't understand why I was unhappy. Why I had the affair. Why I wanted to escape. I was not only lying to my BS, but I spent years lying to myself. I was at least able in these first few hours to tell my BS that I had been sleeping with the ex-other men for 5 years. And now I could start with the truth. I was shocked and disgusted with myself. I never imagined I would ever do anything like this. I cried to myself. But I was in such a state of self-denial that I didn't know what my truth was anymore. There is more to the backstory that led me to this point, which I plan on addressing as I progress through my story. Let's just say that I had emotionally left my husband 2 years before the affair even started. I was so blinded by my own lies to myself that I couldn't recognize the truth if it hit me. So, the rationalizations were based on lies. I was unhappy and, as far as I thought, miserable in my marriage, and thought that it was my BS's fault. I know better now. During the affair, I did think of my husband and what this would do to him, but not enough. Needless to say, I was completely self-absorbed and extremely short-sighted. There are a lot of what-ifs and could-haves and should-haves that I have faced over the past few months. But what I most need to deal with right now is the facts of what I did, and how I will do things differently now that I recognize how my actions have hurt the one person who has the most faith in me. My BS exposed the affair to all parties. The ex-other men's BS is divorcing him. Long story. But he continued to lie and try to cover things up. The friends who you mention learned of the affair only after D-Day and have turned their backs on me and my BS because my BS exposed the affair to X-other man's wife and lay blame on him for their divorce. They remain friends with X-other men. My BS is still with me. We both accept the years of work and repair ahead of us and know that this is a lifelong commitment. I did have experience being cheated on. I know how it feels. I never imagined I could ever do such a thing myself. I now know that I lost myself somewhere along the way and regret to have hurt my BS the way I have. I can only be thankful now that I have a second chance, knowing I will never get another. I wouldn't call any of this a nice life. Not a day goes by that I don't have to answer to him. I have opened myself up completely and have complete transparency. How do you think it feels to know that someone is watching your every move and not trusting a word you say? Despite all of that. Don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. I am grateful to have this chance, but there is nothing easy about it. We are working through this together. The transparency works both ways. When communications are lacking, which is much of what led to my initial checking out, nothing is going to be accomplished. We are both working hard at communicating, both the good and bad. The weeks that followed D-Day were some of the most difficult and challenging. Our lives were turned upside down and chaos was all we faced. All at once I was faced with the flood of my lies and betrayal and the knowledge that I had hurt the one person who trusted me most and loved me more than imaginable. How could I have been so cruel? There was only one thing that I could do. I had to tell the truth. All of it. I wish I could say that it was easy to do this, but it's not. I had to figure out how to drop my ego and go against every instinct I had to try to protect myself and my betrayed spouse from further pain. This is what causes trickle truth. One day you drop your ego and open up, once the truth is out. You see the pain each word causes and how hard it is to relive your betrayal. Welcome back your protector. Your ego. If you find yourself in a situation like mine, drop your ego completely. The only thing that will hurt your betrayed spouse more than your affair itself is cover-up and trickle truth. Each time she learns something new will be like D-Day all over again. I made this mistake too many times, and each time found myself back to the beginning. Spare your betrayed spouse this pain, if you can't be honest. Let them go. I started working backwards, from D-Day, all of the details of the last night with the ex-other men. Then backwards through the previous year. Each encounter. My biggest struggles were with the details that my betrayed spouse was looking for. It was both a factor of not wanting to hurt him and also not wanting to remember. But accessing the details of every experience, texts, and conversation was extremely difficult. I sought advice from people and received a few good suggestions. One suggestion was to create a timeline of events during the affair. I began this exercise and found that sitting down at the computer and seeing my words in black and white allowed me to delve much deeper into my memories than I had been able to just in conversations with my betrayed spouse. It also allowed me to be honest with myself about details of events and emotions. My timeline is not complete, but what I have written I have shared with my betrayed spouse. A second suggestion was to start a journal with my betrayed spouse where we could both write whatever we wanted. This opened up a lot of dialogue between us and initiated a lot of face-to-face conversations that otherwise might have been too difficult for either of us to start. In lieu of a journal of pen and paper, I chose to use a cloud-based document in which we both had access to. We both had editing rights and could be on simultaneously. Although we were cognizant of each other's need to write without the other looking over our shoulder. This is an ongoing document that currently exceeds 40 pages of entries. Each one dated. I envision this document being a permanent part of our relationship, both as a way to reflect on where we have been and also as a means of communication. There was a tremendous amount of reveal, not only about the facts and details of the affair, but also about our marriage preceding the affair. The most pivotal point of our marriage preceding the affair was the loss of a baby at 10 weeks of pregnancy. This occurred approximately 7 years prior to D-Day, 2 years before the affair. Both of us were very excited to be having a second child. When I noticed that I was spotting, I contacted my obstetrician-gynecologists and my husband, who was out of town on a trip, being the strong woman. I told my betrayed spouse that I was okay and would deal with whatever happened. My betrayed spouse was able to be home for the necessary D&C, but I stayed very sterile about the whole thing. It was common. After all, there must have been something wrong with the baby so it wasn't able to survive. Essentially, I shut out my betrayed spouse from seeing any sadness that I had about the loss. and subsequently prevented him from feeling as though he could express his feelings of loss. And so, a new stage of our marriage, we went about our lives as if nothing had happened, but never really talked about anything of great consequence. I started to build a wall and pulled away both emotionally and physically. He became busier in his job and was gone more frequently. We did have a second child, a little over a year after the miscarriage. We both thought that that would be a turning point, and things would be okay. If anything, things got worse. My betrayed spouse was gone. I was busier than ever with 2 children, a full-time job, the house, the bills, etc. I resented my betrayed spouse because he had none of the responsibility, but all of benefits. He could come home, have his bills paid, dinner made, laundry done, playtime with the kids, then off to another adventure somewhere tropical. I hated hearing him say that he didn't enjoy being away. He'd rather have me with him. I couldn't understand how he could not enjoy being away. I just wanted to escape, but I never told him. I never let him know how much I hated being alone and doing it all myself and how much I needed him. I never wanted to admit that I needed anyone. I thought I had to be the dutiful, supportive wife. This was the life I chose. I had to deal with it. Well, obviously, I didn't deal with it. I made the worst choice of my life and entered into an affair. It was my escape, albeit temporary. I didn't have any responsibilities to anyone for 2 hours. That was the biggest lie of all. To me, I selfishly perpetuated this affair as if it were a drug of escape. It never fixed the problems in my marriage. It only made them worse and made the chasm and walls between my betrayed spouse and me wider and bigger. Knowing the truth of the details of the affairs helps my betrayed spouse work through his mind movies and have a clear picture of what I did. Knowing the state of our marriage and what led to me choosing an affair is helping both of us move forward and not make the same mistakes. There was nothing in our marriage that warranted me having an affair. And I am not using these circumstances as an excuse. Just as a lens into my state of mind, there is nothing that my betrayed spouse did that warranted my affair. The choice was mine alone. I am thankful every day that we have an opportunity to learn from our marital mistakes and my poor choices to make our relationship stronger. Someday. The motivation was a need to escape. Yes, I was tired of doing everything, but I was also very unhappy that my marriage was in the crapper but didn't know why. At the time, and didn't know what to do. My husband was away almost every week, 4 to 5 days at a time, home for a couple. Then gone again. Sometimes he was gone for a week, or 2, or more. He did not have any set schedule and could be gone for weeks on end with no warning. By the time he left his job and pursued his new career, our marriage was nothing but a shell of a relationship, both of us unhappy and miserable but going through the motions as if all was okay. He walked on eggshells thinking it was all his fault, my doing, as I regularly blamed him for being unhappy. And I was too much of a coward to really face the truth and what my actions had done. Why did I continue? That is a question I have worked very hard to answer. The answer I have come up with is that I was still seeking an escape from a situation that I was unhappy with. I perpetuated my lies to myself that my marriage trouble was my husband's fault. I would not say that my husband outwardly neglected me. I wouldn't let him in. I shut him out of providing me with any emotional needs that I had. I caused what I perceived as neglect. And he felt powerless. I hated admitting that the truth that the troubles were my fault as well, and thus amplified by my affair. Once I did, I felt so horrified that I ever led my betrayed spouse to believe that he was at fault and also relieved that I could actually do something to repair what was broken. First of all, my miscarriage was not the pivotal role that pushed me towards the affair. It did play a pivotal role, however. In the relationship I had with my husband, following the loss, I shut down and closed myself off to him. Our relationship continued to suffer for 2 years prior to my affair. I don't see any correlation between the loss and the affair. I mentioned it only to explain the state of my marriage. In terms of my feelings towards the ex-other men's wife's pregnancies, I regret to say that with the first, I was so self-absorbed that I didn't even consider it. When I heard of her second pregnancy, I recall questioning, to myself, why would the ex-other men continue to see me while living this seemingly perfect life with his wife and kids? I knew why I was there. Or at least I thought I did, but never discussed his feelings or reasons. Hindsight is 20/20 and I am ashamed to have played any role in the destruction of their family. I pray that the ex-other men's betrayed spouse will be able to find happiness one day, and that her children are loved. I can never forgive myself for being so destructive. When the affair was discovered by my betrayed spouse, I was sincerely relieved that I no longer had to live that lie. The stress of covering my ass had gotten to be too much, which is one reason why I only saw the ex-other men once every other month or so. I had no desire to contact the ex-other men or ever see him again. I did fear that he would try to contact me, however. I had already planned on telling him to leave me alone if I did hear from him. But I never did. Now, I know why. He didn't tell his wife about the affair despite my BS's threat that if he didn't come clean, my betrayed spouse would let her know. The ex-other men impersonated his betrayed spouse in a response to an email to my husband that asked him to respect her need to reconcile and work through things. Until a month later, in a moment of angry weakness, my husband sent another email sharing a few details of the affair in hopes that the ex-other men hadn't shared a few things. This was her D-Day. She immediately threw the ex-other men out. In a few weeks she asked for more details as she was not getting anything from the ex-other men. The entire affair was about my need to escape the reality of my life and my perceived reality of my marriage. The first couple years were more enjoyable as I felt some friendly connection to the ex-other men. The last few years were more of a routine and the continued desire for escape, but certainly felt like nothing more than a piece of ass in the eyes of the ex-other men. I have to back up in time about 22 years here for a bit. When I was in college, I used physical bonding as a means of getting attention. It wasn't about any emotional connection with the guys. It was just about the attention. I spent my 20s and most of my 30s overcoming my crappy behavior and growing up and finding myself. In a way, I feel that I regressed back to my college days and lost sight of who I was. I am working again at finding the real me inside and am grateful that I have Dig to stand by me through this process. He is very intuitive, very honest, and asks tough questions to challenge me. The consequences of my affair stretch out beyond the walls of my home and marriage. Not only did I risk losing my husband and my family, but I have lost many friends and my integrity. My marriage will forever be scarred by my choice to have an affair. If I had had the integrity and courage to face the issues of my marriage, I would never have had the inclination to break the bonds of my vows. If I had been honest with myself and accepted that I needed my husband and had enough faith in him to tell him so, the walls I built between us would never have been built. If I had just let go of my ego and accepted that sometimes a strong woman is stronger when she expresses her needs, I would never have shut him out. Now, I can never take back the pain I have caused. I can never take back what I did. My husband will forever question me and will never trust me fully. I now need to accept that I will have to be accountable for everything I do, every phone call, text, email I make, every conversation I have, and every friend I have. I have to be cognizant of everything so that I never hurt him again. I have to accept that I will, in a sense, be subservient to the wishes of my husband. I am okay with this. If I want my marriage to really work, I have to have accept that I am not always going to be the one in control and that it is okay to let the control go. My career suffered during the first few months after D-Day. Lack of sleep made it difficult to concentrate. My mind was always thinking about the mess I had created. I dealt with self-loathing, sadness, shame, guilt. Emotionally, I was a mess and was a walking time bomb. Luckily, my supervisors were very understanding. I sat down with each of them and explained that I was have serious marital problems. I did not specify. I let them know that I was struggling to do my job at the level that I expected of myself. They both suggested that I do the best I can do and they would support me in any way I needed. It was flattering that they both indicated that my personal professional expectations were so high that no one but me would notice if I was slacking off a bit. I was even given a couple days off to deal with things at home and regroup. Luckily, I have the summer off and can spend almost every minute with my husband and my children. I can recharge myself and recharge my marriage. It has been a blessing. My children will be spending a week with their grandparents, and my husband and I have a lot of plans to enjoy together. We are taking a family vacation in August and are looking forward to the honesty of our marriage to make it the best ever. I am very lucky. I confided in a good friend, colleague about the affair. She has been very supportive both professionally and personally. She is non-judgmental and sincerely checks in on me from time to time to see how I am. She's had my back. I also confided in my sister. We have not talked at great length about details, but she has been supportive of both my husband and me and of our marriage. Shortly after D-Day, my husband contacted a few of our friends about what had happened. One couple in particular needed to know, as they are mutual friends with the ex-other men. My husband selflessly expressed that he wished no sides would be taken, but that they respect his decision to reconcile and that they respect his need to not be invited to events that the ex-other men might be at. Initially, the friends were supportive of my husband. They were shocked at what they learned. I followed up with communication expressing my apologies for the deceit and that it would be a while to be able to face them again. They all indicated that they appreciated my apologies, but it wasn't warranted. Things were okay between us as far as they were concerned, but they were pleased that I was working things out with my husband. My husband decided that he would like to renew our vows on our anniversary this summer. Not as a way to put this all behind us, but as a way to recommit to our marriage, and as a symbol of that commitment, he asked one friend to officiate and invited the others to be with us to witness. They were all part of our wedding 12 years ago. The one friend agreed to officiate. Another couple, who has since been unconditional friends, also accepted the invitation. The other two couples did not reply immediately. A couple months after the initial invitation, we received an email from the couple that was friends with the ex-other men that expressed their discomfort with attending our renewal of vows. They felt that it was inappropriate considering the other couple was heading for D, although we understood their position. It still hurt. Shortly after, our friend who had agreed to officiate backed out. She expressed that she was not comfortable doing the ceremony as she didn't know where we were at in our reconciliation and hadn't really heard anything about it other than we were an MC. That really stung. And finally, the last couple we invited declined the invitation. They had learned about who the ex-other man was and decided that they could not support our reconciliation if the other couple was not doing well. We realized the problem. The perception that they had is that we just rug-swept the affair and were moving on. We did not share with them the details of our daily struggles. The tears, the anger, the pain, all the sleepless nights. We kept that private. It is private. It was between us. So, they had no idea the work that we were doing to repair our marriage and the work that we still have to do. We both felt that we should respect their feelings, but that we would go ahead with the renewal without them because it was about us committing to each other again. To make a longer story short for the sake of the readers, the friends have now blamed my husband for the destruction of the ex-other men's marriage because he informed the other betrayed spouse. They are no longer our friends. All I can add at this point is that my affair has impacted every aspect of my life and the life of my family. I was selfish and wrong and am dealing with the consequences head-on and head-high because now, for once in a long time, I am doing the right thing. My comment, Part 2, the husband's perspective, would come out a few hours from now. Sit back, go grab something to eat, sub and bell, and I'll see you there.